All right, so we've been talking about the organisms that live in ecosystems, the fungi, the plants, the animals, the bacteria, and how well suited they are for the particular area that they live in, the precipitation, the temperature that exists in the area, the nutrients that are available. And so the question becomes, well, how did they get so well suited for that area? The process of becoming well suited for an area in which you live, adapting to an environment, is called evolution. Now, this started with a guy named Charles Darwin, this idea of natural selection. And his studies came from the studies of finches in the Galapagos. Charles Darwin made a boat trip down to the Galapagos Islands and looked at all these different types of animals that lived there and noticed that there were differences even within a population. Some were different colors, or some might have had a different style of beak, either real short and fat or real long and narrow. And those differences tended to be passed from parent to offspring. Now, his idea of natural selection comes with the idea that different traits are better suited for different situations. For instance, birds that have thick, fat beaks are really good at breaking nuts and seeds and getting into the nuts and the seeds. Birds that have really long, thin beaks are really great at catching insects. And so whatever conditions tend to exist at that time, whether it's thicker fur, thinner fur, brightly colored, dull colored, the ones that are well suited to that particular conditions that allows them to survive and to find mates and reproduce will be favored. So that was his idea of natural selection, that the things that have the best traits will survive to reproduce. Now, mutations happen all the time. During DNA replication, your DNA will combine and it will replicate and it will create new cells, and every so often errors can arise. That's where we get cancer from, is errors in our DNA as it replicates. And if that keeps replicating unchecked, then we have a tumor or some other kind of cancer. Often our cells, when they replicate, if there's an error, then either the cell is not viable, it doesn't even work in our bodies, or our bodies see it as a threat and will attack it. But some mutations, especially if they happen in the egg or the sperm cells or the seeds cells of a plant, they are not something that causes it to fail. It's something that causes it to just have a different trait. So those mutations, those alterations in the DNA code, most don't really have a huge effect, kind of like having brown eyes or green eyes. It's not really making you more likely to survive. It's just a different trait that you have. Brown hair or blonde hair, the length of a dog's fur. But some could be favorable or fatal. Maybe the length of a dog's hair makes it more warm in cold environments and way too warm in tropical environments. So that could be something that causes it to be more or less successful in an area. If a bird is brightly colored and it does not blend in well, it's more likely to get eaten. So that could be a fatal mutation. Favorable mutations, however, lead to the better ability to survive and to reproduce. So maybe the bright coloration allows it to attract a mate and makes it more likely to reproduce. Maybe having more of a camouflage coloration makes it more likely to blend in and less likely to be eaten. And so that becomes a favorable mutation. They're able to survive long enough to have babies and pass that trait that they have on to the next group. So over many generations, that natural selection causes the population's characteristics to change. This is called evolution. So evolving is a population thing. I often laugh. My daughter's really big into Pokemon right now. And if you've ever watched Pokemon, you know that eventually the little Pokemon will evolve into its next stage. Well, if evolution doesn't happen within the organism itself, evolution happens in a population as more and more babies are born with those different traits. Those organisms that have the new better traits survive. The ones that don't have the new better traits are less likely to make it. So that trait that they get has a word. It's called an adaptation. An adaptation is an inherited trait that increases your chance of survival or chance of reproduction for that particular environment. So think like the lizards that can change colors. Maybe that's an adaptation to living in the forest with different backgrounds. They can blend into different areas. So adaptation is the trait that allows the population to survive. Now, there's some interesting things in nature. Eventually, you get these little quirks come up. Coevolution is where two species have both changed, their populations have both evolved in response to them interacting over and over. So think like the hummingbird here in our picture and the scarlet catchfly with the long, thin tube. The plant is more successfully pollinated if it can attract hummingbirds. The hummingbird gets a better meal if it can get the nectar from the flowers. So over time, they have adapted together to have this relationship between the two populations. Now, some selection isn't natural. We can actually, humans are smart people, we can selectively breed organisms for special characteristics that we want. Maybe it doesn't have an advantage to the ecosystem, but it has an advantage to us, like sweet corn with lots of seeds or more nutritious corn. Most of our crops and our domestic animals are products of artificial selection. We have picked out the biggest, the best, the one with the most favorable traits. Think about all the different species of dog. Dogs are one species, but yet there's so many different varieties because we have selectively bred for the ones that are the tiniest Yorkies or the biggest Great Danes or whatever the person wants that dog to be like. So we can artificially select. Agriculture, there are milk cows and there are beef cows. If you've grown up around agriculture, you know this. You may not have. The top two, the Jersey and the Holstein, those are milk cows. You see the udders underneath, how big they are. They are selectively bred to have the biggest volume of milk produced, and they're dairy cows. Then underneath it, you see the it looks like a Brangus. I'm not sure, they say Galloway on here. And then the Hereford, those are both beef cows. They're made to have big muscles and lots of mass and make lots and lots of hamburgers and roast beef for us. So through time, even cow has diverged into different types of cows. Sometimes, however, things can adapt a trait that we don't want. So think pests or bacteria. If bacteria are resistant to antibiotics, then that adaptation has allowed them to survive the antibiotic. That's good for them, but bad for us. The pest may be resistant to pesticide, great for their population. We don't want them to have a big population. So the process of developing resistance is that ability to tolerate something that's designed to kill it. So again, good for that population, but bad for those of us that are trying to get rid of it, whether it's bacteria, pest, whatever. The survivors will pass that protection to their offspring, and the whole population will, over time, become more resistant to pesticides and antibiotics. So they talk about antibiotic resistance, like don't take antibiotics unless you're actually really sick, because any bacteria that survive your round of antibiotics are stronger, and then you get worse sick the next time. So here's one where we've done some pesticide spraying for, it looks like cockroaches. Some of them are able to survive the pesticide, and then they can pass that trait on to the next one. So the next generation then has more and more cockroaches that are able to survive this pesticide. Bad for us. Good for the cockroaches, but bad for us. So with this selection, whether it's natural, whether it's wanted or unwanted, we get different types of selection happening to our population. So stabilizing succession is when our characteristics stay in that moderate range. They're neither extreme nor dominant. If it changes to either extreme, then your survival is more limited. So I'm going to flip over here and show you a picture. In the middle right there, you see stabilizing succession. The red line is your population. So let's take height of people. Some are under 5 feet, some are over 6 feet, but most of us tend to be right there in the middle. Now, stabilizing succession takes out some of those extremes and makes more and more people fall into that middle category, okay? Disruptive selection is when your characteristics end up at the extremes. There's fewer in the middle, and then that evolution separates your two populations. So perhaps you have, let's say, moths. Maybe you had gray moths, and then you had some conditions which favored a brighter colored, maybe a white moth. Some conditions favored a darker colored moth. Now you suddenly don't have any more gray moths. You have black and you have white, depending on where they're living. So that would be disruptive selection. You did have something in the middle, and then it ended up changing to either extreme. Okay. And then finally, directional selection will favor one extreme over the other. So we've actually changed together from one to the other, and we do change, we evolve towards that favored extreme. So perhaps with directional selection, perhaps for a long, long time, where wolves were living, it didn't snow very much. And so brown wolves were the most successful predators because they blended into the dirt in the forest. Then maybe the climate changed and it became more and more snowy in the winter. So wolves tended to maybe try to be, or the ones that were favored were the grayer wolves. And so maybe where you had brown wolves, now you have gray wolves. That has completely changed the population because your conditions have changed. And so they too must change with those conditions. So those are your types of selection, depending on how your population responds. Now, where you get, for instance, with that disruptive selection, if we now have white moths and black moths, where we used to have gray moths, then we can actually split into different species. Speciation is where you end up with two completely different species that can't interbreed anymore. If they try to, then they don't produce any fertile offspring. So you could have that with geographic isolation. Maybe they're physically separated by a mountain range or an island. You could have reproductive isolation. These different species cannot produce live fertile offspring anymore. They can't interbreed. They either can't breed to begin with because their bodies are so different, or in the case of plants, maybe their reproductive parts, their seeds and whatnot are so different, or even maybe they produce an offspring, but it's kind of a hybrid. It's not really a fertile offspring. It's like a donkey and a horse makes a mule. That's isolated because of reproductive isolation. So that's how we can create new species. That's how our species can adapt to our environments and how they are perfectly suited for where they live. Okay, so next time we'll look at biodiversity and how we know how healthy our ecosystems are. Wow, I need to learn to talk.